Welcome to another episode of the Being and Doing podcast, where I try to create a space and bring you stories of the unique minds that are all around us. And today I'm actually very excited about my guest because it is the first time I'm interviewing a very interesting Serbian musician on a podcast in English. And I'm very curious to bring you his personality because I actually don't have really words to describe the breadth of his personality. So he is broadly a composer, but I'm sure he's much more than that. So I'm very curious to meet that rainbow today and welcome Sale. Can I call you Sale or?
Yeah, absolutely. But after such an introduction, I'm like, wow, what am I supposed to say now? But thank you for such a lovely introduction, and for inviting me to the podcast. This is actually my first podcast that I'm doing in English, so it's also like very exciting for me too, because it's been a while since I left LA, and you don't have much opportunities to speak in English. So I'm looking forward to it.
So actually, then it's a privilege for me to have this opportunity.
So let's just say things happen in the right time. Finally,
yes.
Finally, we meet. I mean, over Zoom for this occasion.
So then I will start with just a simple question. So what are some words that you describe yourself with? So it can be nouns, adjectives, whatever you feel like encapsulates who you are.
Well, compassionate, I guess, empathic. That's the first thing that really came to my mind, actually. Like, to care for people around you, to really be empathic in every possible way. I cannot really think of anything else. I mean, is it stupid to say that you're good? Everyone thinks they're good. So that's not really some sort of explanation. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be grateful. I'm trying to be kind. Just to, see to be able to see the people around you, to be able to be appreciative for nature around you and stuff like that. I mean, that pretty much describes it. I mean, the music and everything else, everything is a part of that system. I mean, music is the way I express that, all of that things that you are. You express it through music. But it's probably a tricky question, because I'm in my nature is that I really don't know how to talk about myself too well. So I don't really think about that so much. I mean, to try to specify, but I'm doing the best I can. If you have any other suggestions, I may recognize myself in them, but nothing really comes to my mind.
Well, actually, then I have a question in terms of music and creation, because in order to be and achieve what you have done in your life, there needs to be some sort of structure, some sort of discipline. And I'm so wondering how do you combine that with compassion?
Well, disciplined. I wish I was actually more disciplined. So the thing is, I don't know if there's an expression in English when you sit on two chairs, really, because like
when you're split.
Yeah. Because I started as a guitar player, and I wanted that to be my future, like, to be like my dad, like to play the guitar and sing and have my own band, and that's it. And then at one point, when I was 13, I entered a band that is called Mama Koko. They were actually my father's age. My father even played with them, so they were like a lot older. And they were the ones that actually, when you're a kid, somebody has to like slap you from time to time just to keep you practicing and stuff like that. I mean, not literally, but they were the ones who actually gave me a lot of material to do. And I was all in that direction, like Stevie Wonder, and like we play Stevie Wonder, we play Peter Gabriel, we like a lots of stuff that you don't really hear mainstream. The music I heard through my father, like Quincy Jones and all the other bands, like I was all in that direction. And at one point I started to doing this formal education in like a classical music training. That's when I became a composer. I actually started loving classical music since I was 13, and actually that was no, not 13. that was the third year of high school. So that's like pretty late,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But then from then on, I really had to do both kind of like each one of those disciplines requires some time, and I could never organize myself. Okay, now I'm going to do this, and tomorrow I'm going to do that. It was always like all around the place, depending on what's the priority in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was in the third year of academy, I composed my first violin concerto. I was 23 at the time. And at that same period, we had a tour with Zdravko Čolić. He had those two concerts in Arena, Belgrade Arena. So I was like, thank God we have two concerts because I'm going to get some money so I can pay the stage manager to like get the chairs for the orchestra and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I was not disciplined, but I'm trying to find the ways like to get it all done. And sometimes, you know, it's more busy, sometimes not so much, but actually I wish actually I was more disciplined. I'm trying, but you know, when you try to do a lot of stuff at the same time, because you know you can, but you know at the same time that you're not going to make, you know, and actually that kind of feeling that you're being chased and that you're constantly late, maybe actually that has some good things about them. Like you don't tap yourself on the shoulder too much because you just have to keep going in order to make it to the next thing that you're supposed to do. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but at the same time, I mean, instead of just saying a few words that would describe me, maybe this kind of little bit longer explanation would do it better.
Well, to be honest, I kind of experienced similar things in my own life, and then after starting doing my therapy, I realized, well, it's okay to embrace many different parts of ourselves. And it's okay to sometimes express one and sometimes express the other. And I think that's actually, it's quite interesting because we can live many lives in one life a little bit.
Well, yeah, if you look at it like that, it kind of is. I mean, you know, it's one thing when I'm supposed to conduct a concert composing something classical, and it's the other thing when I'm getting on a stage with a band. It's a totally different audience. It's a different culture of listening to the music, and it is actually a different kind of life in music, and it's really interesting because on one end there's the classical stuff, on the other hand there's the rock and roll stuff, and in the middle there's theater on the Terazije. That's actually the place where I work as a conductor and an orchestrator. The most recent musical we did was Flashdance. I did the orchestration for that. It's more like making it into a 5-piece band. I mean, we didn't need strings and winds and everything. But there's an interesting musical from Bajaga, actually. It's called S druge strane jastuka, on the other side of the pillow. Mm-hmm. So they made a musical. It's like what they did with ABBA, and these guys tried to do it with Bajaga, which is a Serbian pop star, like one of the, you know, like Leonard Cohen. I don't know who to compare him with. I mean, but he's not Leonard Cohen. Balašević would be more like Cohen. But yeah, and that theater is somewhere in the middle, actually, because you have a rhythm section that comes from pretty much rock and roll, and you have like a brass section. Like, it's not like big band. You don't have 5 trumpets, 4 trombones, but you have 2 trumpets, 2 trombones. So you have like this big band plus strings plus rock and roll kind of sound. And that's the third life, like, you know, as a conductor in a theater. So yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful. I mean, it's a stressful thing when you're supposed to like do things on deadline, and especially now I'm doing this doctorate thing, and it's gonna take a lot from me, but it has to be like that. It's a huge topic, but at the same time, it's very interesting. Like when you look at it like that, like I had a promotion of my album recently with the band and these musicals, and now it's time for a little bit more classic. But this is gonna be my final exam. Like once I do that, oh my God, I'm gonna take some nice vacation. But yeah, it's I'm really grateful, like because I found myself pretty early in music, and I'm really grateful for everything that's happening, and I'm trying to like handle it all. You know, I might become more disciplined one day. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. So I have many questions, but before we go into the kind of fine lyrical questions, just to systematize, what are you in music? Because you were mentioning being a classical composer, having your own band,
Yeah.
you are a professor as well.
Yes.
And what else? Maybe it's better for you to say, because I might miss something.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with the official stuff. I'm a professor, like I'm currently working at a faculty in Niš, and I teach vocal literature, the orchestration, like an introduction to orchestration, analysis of musical styles, composition, but composition is kind of facultative. It's like a really this first level before they even try to like get to the real academy in Belgrade, for example, or anywhere else where you really have to study composition. Then the second job that is not steady, actually, it's like a 6-month contract, so I'm not fully employed in theater on Terazije, but I work there as a conductor, so professor, conductor. But a lot of my time goes on arranging. This is like I started with official stuff, and I have you said systematize. How can I systematize? Yeah, I'm a composer and a conductor. Like that pretty much sums it all. I started as a guitar player, and guitar is still my number one instrument. I'm also like a multi-instrumentalist. It's a complicated word, but I do play like.
Which other instruments?
Or guitar, bass, piano, and drums, and bass, double bass as well, piano and everything with the keys, and drums. I have an old Slingerland, and I love drums. Actually, I started pretty much drums as at the same time when I started the guitar. It's just that I didn't have the drums, and I didn't put that much work in, but I can record for myself and I can record for other people when we're talking about this like pop production.
Mm-hmm.
And also for my own band. Actually, I just had my album released, and on some of those songs I pretty much played everything, and it's good. It's fast sometimes when you don't need to depend on other people, so it has its practical sides. But then again, playing with others is also, you get that magic that you can only get by playing at the same time with other people. So that's also valuable, and I'm planning to do that a little bit more. Because all these guys that I'll playing in the band, they're really good.
I must notice something while you're talking about this. There is like a huge smile on your face, and it's like I feel like you, while you're talking about every of these aspects, it's like you are being in them in the moment, and then something happens for you, something that's magical inside of you, and I'm wondering what that is.
No, I'm just thinking about these guys as I'm telling you about these guys that play in a band, because like we haven't done that sort of like jam together and create together. So I'm just wondering, maybe I should call them. So, and I just tried to imagine that scene, and I was like, man, that would be good, and it would be faster, because like when you're doing it all by yourself, usually it starts off with an idea with the drums, and then I come into the bass and everything. But you have to you have to stop one to do the other thing, and then come back and so on. And when you have people around you, you can organize it much more fast. And actually, that's the thing that I liked, and that's what made me maybe become a conductor later. Just care for the details in music, like to care about the details in articulation and dynamics, and like all those little things that so sometimes people don't think about. It's more like a classical approach to popular music, and that's like the meeting of those two worlds. Like the way you try to articulate as a conductor some classical stuff, you can also do that with rock and roll instruments. Play softer, open up your hi-hat, like some sort of instructions that are really concrete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know how did I get there?
I'm enjoying to see your thought process, and actually I'm constantly drawn by the painting behind you, and I'm wondering what it is, because I'm seeing
Bob Marley. It was a painting in my wife's apartment, and I don't know why she wanted to get rid of him, but so I adopted Bob Marley, and there he is. There are some other paintings as well of my father and my mother, so I'm actually, I have to rethink, because there's not a lot of space in here, and yeah, actually I wish I had more space to put a lot of those paintings around. Actually, on Facebook there are some interesting like groups where you have like old photos of old musicians, like from jazz, from classical, stuff. So I'm actually collecting all those photos, and at one point I'm just imagining to have like this. It doesn't have to be a large room, but it can make like I don't know what's the word for the thing that you
Collage.
Yeah, like a collage that you can put on a wall, really, like to cover the whole part of the wall. It'd be interesting because from time to time I just go check, and there's like 200 of some really cool photos of some really good musicians, not necessarily musicians, some other people too, but anyway, yeah.
And I had the questions that I stayed with when you were talking about your different expressions and different aspects and playing with Zdravko Čolić. And maybe we want to say who Zdravko Čolić is, because people who are going to be listening to this might not know the extent of this person.
Yeah, so the thing is that parallel, while I was going to the high school and later on the academy, I played in a lot of bands, a lot of rock bands. And then at some point from 2003, I started accompanying some people that were like mainstream stars, like Aleksandar Radulović, so some singers that came up at that time. And soon after that, I started playing with Zdravko Čolić, who is like Tom Jones in America. Like he's a really ex-Yugoslavian. I think he's pretty much the only one that actually is still alive and that still does the concerts and everything. So he's like really big in all of ex-Yugoslavian republics. Like, I remember my first concert with him was in Slovenia, and it was like full, and it was really cool. And then we played a lot of like all throughout the Europe, pretty much. We played in London as well. What was oh my God, I forgot the name. Forgot the name of the place. But we played in London as well. I was in London for like 3 days, so it doesn't really count. And it's like it was like 15 years ago. I would love to come again sometimes. But we played Australia, we played Canada, we went to America. Like it's a life experience for me, because like with nobody else I could travel that's to those destinations.
And I'm wondering also, like, what is it feeling when you are in front of so much people? I don't think I know anyone who has been in front of so much people.
Well, at one point, at least for me, it became. It's almost every time it's pretty much the same. Like when we're playing stadiums, I think you somehow, at least for me, I mean, I stopped noticing what is the number. You just see like a crowd. It's like you're like on a beach and you're seeing the water like going up and down. You don't see it as a group of people anymore. So yeah, I got used to it really. Of course, there is some adrenaline, but I cannot really tell the difference if there's more adrenaline when I'm coming up the couloirs to conduct something or here in front of. Like we played Maracana. That was like 60,000 people on Maracana in 2007.
Just to say to people, this is a football stadium in Belgrade.
Football stadium, yeah. That can fit 60,000 people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the biggest crowd that I played with Zdravko, and yeah, it was pretty amazing. And that's the first time we used in-ear monitoring, which we never did before. So it was like, it was a weird feeling. Like you were there, but you cannot feel that whole thing because you have your earplugs where you have instruments and you hear a bit of the audience, but you're somehow in some vacuum space. So that was a bit weird. But other than that, yeah, it's I guess maybe overwhelming, but as I said, we probably got used to it over time. So I stopped paying attention. But yeah, well, because we mentioned Zdravko Čolić before that, at the same time when he had those two big concerts in Belgrade Arena, at that same time I was organizing my own first violin concerto in City Hall, actually. So I was lucky enough to have a friend that actually wanted to finance that concert, because that's always the biggest problem. Like how are we going to pay like 50 people, because that's how much people you need for a symphony orchestra. And this friend of mine, he helped me. He actually financed the whole thing, and he put me in contact with the mayor at the time, and she was kind enough to actually to allow me to use that space for the concert. So it was really magical, and it was full. But at the same time, I'm in the same day I have to be at the rehearsal with Radulović, and later on, like I have to like meet the second horn to give him the scores, and to rehearse the orchestra, and because I didn't conduct only my concerto, which is a stress by itself. Like that was the first time I stood in front of the orchestra to conduct the full concert by myself, and I was conducting myself. I conducted Sibelius's Violin Concerto and some Honegger summer pastoral. Never mind, but I mean, it's a huge program. So, and yeah, I cannot remember being disciplined then, but I do remember that it really was a lot of work, especially when I was composing and touring at the same time.
Wow, I can imagine. But then there must be something about, I remember organizing one small concert and that feeling when you do it at the end and you're I have done it. It's nice, no?
Oh my God, I remember like the day after I was supposed to meet the people to give them the money for the concert. And it was called Stupica. It was pretty much, it's Jugoslovensko Narodno Pozorište, Yugoslavian theater. On the other side, there was a musical academy, and that place Stupica where we used to meet. It's also a theater. But anyway, I remember I was sick the whole day, and when I met the last person to give him the money, I just started walking, and I had to go aside and throw up. I mean, that's how affected I was. Like, oh my God, it's over! It's really over. Jesus. I remember having those things like a few times. First time was when I was entering on my entrance exam for musical high school, Josip Slavenski, because I didn't have any primary music education as people do in Serbia. In Serbia, you go like 6 years if you play piano, 4 years if you play some other instrument, and then you can go to music high school, and from music high school you can apply to the academy. Anyway, I didn't have that first step, so I remember that on the first entrance exam, I felt they wouldn't let me in, and they told me to get back in August. So I took some private lessons and I improved, and from then on everything went well. But I remember that day when I actually went home, I just lay down and fell asleep and woke up the next day, and it was really weird. But yeah, there were a few moments that when you say, like, when you do it, the feeling is great, but sometimes it can do like a little bit of physical mess. Like,
yes, yeah, of course. If you do it under a lot of stress, then it is crazy.
Yeah, but over time, when you get used to it, then you just keep going, and it always came like that. I mean, when I was in the United States as well. I mean, we'll get to that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask before that. Also, you were mentioning different feelings with different audiences. And the culture of listening to music being very different. So I'm wondering, can you say more about that? How does it feel? How does it look like?
Well, the audience that comes to Colares to any concert hall to listen to classical music, like, there's like a code of manners in those situations, I guess. Maybe there's a better word for that. But anyway, I mean, Yes, you sit down, you listen to it, whatever it is, you're going to clap. You're not going to give your honest reaction sometimes. You're just going to clap, right? And in that sense, these other audience, like whether you're playing in a restaurant or you're playing with a rock band, okay, well, with restaurants and a rock band, they're also like two different things, but the contact between the listener and the music is not as formal, and the audience is much more critical, actually. Yeah, critical and at the same time responsive. Like, when you really get them, you're going to see their reaction. When you're not getting to them, they're going to throw bottles at you. Maybe not today, but I'm exaggerating to make a point. So yeah, and that's why I think, like, I think that was very, very valuable for me, like, to have that perspective, like that perspective from that kind of audience and that kind of connecting people through music. To have that as an ability when you are composing some classical stuff, to have that in mind, like, not to make something that they're going to bite more easily, but it's the honest way people react to music, and you're going to see it much more likely in that kind of place than in a concert hall, wherever we're going to be politically correct and so on.
And who are the first people that are listening to your compositions?
I guess the audience. I mean, because I usually don't play it to anyone before it on the concerts, because you don't there's nothing to play. I mean, I can play them Sibelius MIDI file, which can give you some idea of the structure, but it's not the real thing. But I don't have like certain people that I play my stuff to. Like my composition professor, Vlastimir Trajkovic, he passed away a few years ago. I used to play my stuff for him because he was a professor, but sometimes even to him it happened that simply he's living his life, I'm living my own, and I didn't make a single consultation. I just bring in the score and the and the DVD, like with Nemanja Radulović playing some of my stuff. I'm trying to explain myself how I was in the process, so I didn't want to take his time. But other than that, we usually, for example, when I did my first symphony, my best man, violin player Miloš Petrović, also one of my best friends, he played this violin concerto with me when we were both 23 years old, and he was also a concertmaster when we did my first symphony in Kolar. He was here. He was sleeping actually in my place because he lives and works in Germany now. So he was a bit in the process. I played some parts to him, but it's just because he was here, and he was the concertmaster, so actually asking some questions about the bowing, like since you're here and you're going to play it, let's try a few versions of this and see what works more. So sometimes that happens when friends are around, when I'm working, when they ask me to play me what you're doing, I just play it and that's it. But yeah, I usually keep it to myself before it's almost done.
So it's a little bit of a lonely process then.
Yeah, it's absolutely a lonely process, especially for classical composition. Like when you're making a song, when you're recording a pop song or whatever, I can do it by myself. But sometimes I play somebody to play saxophone, somebody to play strings and stuff like that. I mean, that's how I pretty much recorded the whole first album of mine. And that's sometimes you invite other people to play, and that it makes the whole process more fun, and you have some other energy in that whole thing. But when you're composing, it's really just you, and there is no other way. Like it has to be like that, and you're the one actually making all the decisions. But I love it. It's just sometimes it's pretty much like everything. Like sometimes you have good days when you can compose a lot, and sometimes you have bad days. You hear it tomorrow and you realize that it sucks, and cannot use pretty much. You can use these two bars, but everything else just delete it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but then again, you get used to it, and it's that kind of discipline in composing. That's the type of discipline that I use on the other types of music that I'm doing. My album, even if it's like a rock funk, it has a lot of stuff in it, but it fits in that popular genre, let's say. I'm pretty much focused on the details in the same way that I'm focused on details when I'm writing something. I try to like really keep it as clean as possible.
And I'm wondering, when does the creation start? Does it start in the studio? Does it start in your head and then it happens in the studio, or it's a mix? Or
I think for every song is different, and for every project was different. Okay, maybe when I have a commission, then I simply start to like dig, and at some point it comes. But a lot of my ideas actually came from me just playing around with the guitar, and then I play something, and I grab that idea, and then I keep on going, and that's pretty much the way the composition is done. Sometimes you can hear a part of music that is already there, and you just have to write it down. That happened as well a few times, where I really just wrote it down and I did some things in orchestration, and that was it. But sometimes you really have to just play, and when you find a good idea, try to develop that. And it's a system of action and reaction, really. I mean, that's the process of composing, pretty much.
And then I wanted to ask you, actually, what was your first touch with music? How did that start?
When I was in a visit to my father in 1992, it was a summer, so I was still 9. I'm born in September, so in September that fall I will turn 10. I went to see him, and it was in German part of Switzerland. The place was called Hindelbank. It's like a small village close to Bern. And I really had nothing to do. And I was there for a few months. I didn't know the language. There was no any friends, anything. So pretty much the only thing I could do is to start playing something. And there was this red Fender Stratocaster that was hanging on the wall, and I liked it. And my father had a story that's the guitar that he bought for me. So was it really for me? Never mind. But it serves a purpose. And that's how I really started playing. And since I didn't have nothing else to do when I was in Switzerland, I really did it every day for like a few months. And it was a struggle. Like, the House of the Rising Sun, like, those four chords just strumming in tempo. Oh my God, that was frustratingly hard for me to, learn. But I did learn it, and that's really how it all started. And then I came back to Belgrade. Guitar was still in Switzerland, but our mutual friend, also the famous guitar player from Serbia, Zlatko Manojlović, he actually brought me that first Stratocaster. That was my guitar for pretty much until 1996. Because that was like a hard time in Belgrade in a way. So the guy actually attacked me in my own building where I live. We were going back home from the gig. It's like a public transportation, and the place where I live is just you get outside the bus and you have like maybe 20 meters, and you're in the building already. But the guy waited for me there, and he entered the building after me, and he pulled out a gun and took my guitar on the first floor. We live in the third floor.
Whoa!
And he took that. That was the guitar, that red Stratocaster that I started playing on. So yeah, that was a hell of a guitar. But never mind. I mean, I get the other guitar. Luckily, my father is a guitar player, so in order to comfort me, he sent me, because he lives in Switzerland, and we were living in Belgrade. We still are. So yeah, I got a new guitar, but that was a interesting experience.
Yeah. Wow.
You get over it over time, but I still sometimes dream about that guitar. I mean, it's it's a 80s Stratocaster. It's nothing too fancy, but it's really a wonderful instrument. And anyway, that was the first contact with music, like through the guitar, because my father was a guitar player, and as I said, pretty much since I was born, he used to live in Switzerland. I used to live in Serbia, and he comes from time to time, and I miss him. And there's this whole connection between us that didn't really happen. Then I wanted to make it happen through music in a weird kind of way, I guess. So I started playing, and that was like the model to make my daddy proud and stuff like that. And I just got hooked on music, and he used to listen to good stuff. I remember my favorite band when I was in primary school, like 5th and 6th grade, were Creedence Clearwater Revival, like Susie Q and that kind of stuff. Jimi Hendrix, Earth, Wind and Fire, Quincy Jones, all the old stuff from Quincy Jones, like when he got back from Paris. So some really, really, really good stuff. And I just kept really doing it, not thinking about. Nobody actually made me do it. Nobody cared if I'm doing it or not. I just found something that I can really put my all time in, and the more I do, the more happy I was. Because the time was kind of weird. I mean, the groups in school where you can actually hang out if you're not doing that. So I think that pretty much that whole musical thing might actually save me, because those times in Serbia were not that great.
I mean, just again to say to people who are not from Serbia, that was war times and a lot of inflation, and then eventually bombing. So it was difficult to stay sane and difficult not to get into drugs, I think, at the time.
Yeah, well, we were too small for drugs at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, when you say drugs, I remember a lot of those guys actually overdosed themselves from heroin. That's like that was the serious stuff at that time.
Yeah. And then basically that was the entrance. The guitar was the entrance, and then you said you did music academy. So what happened next? What's the journey like?
The journey, So yeah, I started with the guitar, and then I fell in love with Chopin.
Oh, I love Chopin.
Yeah, well, that's what got me into classical music, really, because as I said, I went to high school just to learn theory, because these friends of my father that I was in a band, they were like, you have to learn music theory, that's very important. I was like, okay, I learned it, and that's it. So I had no plans of becoming a composer, or classical music was boring. I didn't listen to it at all. There were a few things that I loved since I was a kid. My mother used to play them to me. Like one was, of course, Mozart, Eine kleine Nachtmusik.
Mm.
Dum, da, dum, da, 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 da. I love that since I was a kid. That, then Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake, and oh yeah, Mozart G minor symphony. That to this day, that's like, it's popular, everyone knows it, but still, I mean, that composition is insanely good. But other than that, as I said, I mean, I hated classical music before I was 17. That's when I discovered Chopin, and I started practicing piano like crazy.
Mm. And what about Chopin? I mean, I think for me personally, Chopin is kind of an expression of longing, and it's just like every time he has this deceptive cadence, I'm like, ah. And I'm wondering, what is it that it works for you?
Actually, that was a CD that I borrowed from a friend, and it's one of those CDs that you can buy you know, on in a supermarket, like the best of Chopin, something like that.
Mhm.
But it was played by Maurizio Pollini, who I became to love, like when I heard the other recordings that he had made. So there were some etudes, there were some mazurkas, there were some waltzes, and I remember that the first thing was this C sharp minor waltz.
Mm.
Never mind. I mean, I think my sister used to play it, and then when I heard it again, I fell in love with that composition in particular. And I didn't know how to play the piano well, but I had to learn that stuff. And there has this other uh, that part.
Yeah.
So I just had to learn how to play that. And
Mm.
that's what actually began my classical music journey. And since then, really, I'm still trying to somehow keep up with, maybe not now, but especially in that first period, because I didn't have any knowledge of it before that. There was simply a lot to keep up with and to really hear a lot of music. And I remember going to my first consultation before I got on composition on Belgrade Music Academy. And professor asked me, like, which composer from 20th century is my favorite? And I said Tchaikovsky. That's how clueless I was. So yeah, there was a lot of keeping up, but at the same time, it really opened me up in terms of knowing the structure of music, knowing the harmony, knowing how to lead voices, like knowing that what would be the word for zanat, like the craft of
The
composition, really.
craft. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then it shapes everything else, like, because if you're aware of it, you can play a song if you're aware of the form while you're playing it. If you know what are the climaxes, if you know the articulations, the dynamics, you can make so much more when you just know all that stuff that you learn in learning composition and seeing how other people did it. It's just a wonderful, never-ending process. And then the guitar, guitar is still my most honest and most direct way of communicating through music, but it's still just one tool that has to be a part of this whole picture, and that whole picture is always much more important than your ability to play. Of course, that too, but there has to be both things. And that's why I think that every player, whatever you play, should at least try to compose something, like to try to have that perspective as well, especially people who are good at it. You have a lot of literature that came through your fingers and your mind already. Like, why not try to combine it and come up with something of your own? Because that's the whole point of everything, and that's how we actually do it. So they actually have an advantage in a way, only if they wanted to do it. So yeah, if I can encourage somebody to do it, so, try to compose.
Go for it. Yeah. So actually, it was so nice to hear you play, because I feel like talking to you is almost elusive without listening to your music. So I think at the end of the interview, I would love to hear something from you for our audience. But
you mean like this on the piano?
yeah, I mean, or whatever you can. I mean, whatever it's feasible to do, because I'm thinking that that you can say so much more through the music than through actually explaining the music.
Yeah, but I know, but maybe it's better to play some of those recordings.
We can think of that. So I'm thinking also. So now, like, in terms of the impacts on your life, you mentioned your dad and him being a guitar player, and you mentioned some of the musicians you love. But who are the people that have really shaped you and impacted you the most in your journey?
Well, the first one is, of course, my mother, because she was a professor of English literature. She also used to teach in Niš at some point in her career. So she used to take me to Niš. Niš is a city that is south of Serbia, like south from Belgrade, like 300 kilometers. And then she started working in the Faculty of Dramatic Arts. She taught English, but through that English, she actually taught them how to think in this way that is connected to their profession. Like, it's what are the modern dramas, and she had like a very, very, very specific way of teaching her students. But yeah, all of my character. Sabina, my English is bugging. Like
my traits.
Well, yeah, everything that makes me what I am actually comes directly from my mother. That's the point. Like all that idea of compassion, of being aware of other people, be grateful, and all of my views come pretty much from her and from my composition professor Vlastimir Trajkovic. He was a professor at Belgrade Academy of Music, and I studied with him for 5 years. That's like the old program before Bologna came in. Composition studies were 5 years. So we were 5 years in contact, and actually through teaching me music, he taught me a lot of stuff about about manners in general. Like he was member of Academy of Arts and Science. Yeah, so he was like a real intellectual, and he knew sometimes he overreacted, but I mean, I think that is good, because all of the students that were in his class picked up a little from that. And, it's good to have that as some sort of a role model. And he showed us a lot of great music. And as I said, both through music and through really educating me about various kinds of stuff. Yeah, two of them. So my mother and my composition professor. Father was not here directly, but, that first connection to music is because of my father. So he's also involved in, that may be the crucial thing, actually, even though he was not physically present. But yeah, Ljiljana Bogojeva, my mother, and Vlastimir Trajkovic, my composition professor, two of them are the most important.
And how has being a father changed you or affected you?
Yes. I mean, this is all actually before Ljubica, my wife, and my daughter Leona. It's wonderful. It's very wonderful. I'm trying to put it into words because I didn't really think about it. Because it's happening now all the time, and yeah, it just reminds you of how life is wonderful in a way, and simple, and she actually calms me down, like when I'm nervous about something. But that's it's just that, like, don't be nervous. So it's she's like a little medicine. Yeah, literally. Well, in terms of creativity, in terms of do I do anything differently just because Leona is around? I don't know. But I did make her a song. It's actually on the album, and I actually made a song, Leona, before she was born, so I can, make my wife to choose that name for her. So yeah, there's a song for Leona, and in the second movement of my saxophone concerto, there's the very beginning. I remember when I was composing, I was at the piano. She was still a baby. She just learned how to walk, and so she came to the piano and she did down, pom, pom, down, to, pom. Not in that rhythm, but those were the notes. So I took that theme, and like that's the beginning of the whole second movement, and the whole first section is actually that. And it's kind of funny the way it's done. I mean, you have to listen to it. So,
No,
but
I'm very curious. Yeah.
that's a. I mean, it's hard to try to explain it. It's better if
I think maybe we can play that at the beginning of the interview when I edit it, so we can do that.
Yeah, it's a slow music. It doesn't, you can talk over it, and especially you'll hear. But yeah, so she definitely. I don't know. I mean, she's 7 now, so she's a part of a system for a long time now. But yeah, she's definitely a very, very, very important part of the system. I'm really glad she's here. It's just a whole new category when you have some little thing to to take care of.
Yeah, and I'm wondering the name Leona. Why was that so appealing to you?
I was on a tour. It was like a small tour with band Svina Pod. And their driver had a daughter whose name was Leona. And I haven't heard the name before that. I was thinking Luna or something, but I didn't really like either one of those. And I heard Sale, which is their driver, talking on Skype with his daughter. And that's when I first heard the name Leona. And then I was like, Leona Sedlar, oh my God, that would be so nice. And, since then I, stuck to the idea and made a song, and but it's good. It fits her. I really love that we chose that name for her. It's a good fit.
Yes, I don't know. I have seen one interview, and I do see her as a little lioness. And I'm curious, what is maybe a pain that has shaped you the most, that you are willing to share? So rather than, a success.
Pain. Well, there's a pain part about my father. There's a pain part about those little things that happen in the meantime, like when they took that guitar. That was also one traumatic thing. Then when I got to high school, before, like when I didn't go through in that first entrance exam, like those are just some little pains that I'm trying to think of, but they all actually turned out good, because like every pain makes you work harder, and sometimes it doesn't work for some people, and that's why I guess each person has its own path, but I think pains are generally important in that sense. Of course, I mean, hopefully that they're bearable and that all those problems are solvable. But I cannot really think of one that actually changed, because the music was somehow always there. Like whatever happens, whether it's good or bad, it's like a little shelter. So and it's immune. It's immune pretty much to. I mean, immune. It comes out through music, but it doesn't make me do things differently, or even thinking to switch to something else or something like that. One of the recent pains which left a mark, I guess, is the passing of my mother. Like that's the whole new category of pain when you lose someone that close, and that simply, like when that happens, it's really a new category of not just pain. I mean, experience. Then you actually try to remember, not try to remember, but you realize that actually all the things that they are left are still somehow inside, and then they're still actually here, even though they're, you cannot hug them, you cannot talk to them, but if they passed on what needs to be passed on, then it's all good, I guess. But it is a new category.
Yeah, I actually had an experience. I went to Madrid, and they have something they call micro theaters, and there was two actors with five of us sitting in a very intimate space, and it was about a woman and her grandma, and it was kind of a memory, and it was coming to the present moment, and in memory, present moment, memory. And she said basically at the end, yes, you lived through me. And I just remembered because my grandpa was singing me songs, and when he passed away, every time I sing the songs he was singing to me, it feels like he's still somewhat there.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful story.
Yeah. And then one other thing is, what was the truth about reality that you were unwilling to accept for the longest time? So what were you resisting in terms of truths that are truths of life that you were like, no, I don't want to see that, I don't want to look at that?
I really cannot remember.
That's amazing.
No, because I mean, yeah, like one thing that I resisted, like, when am I going to do the first training and get these extra 20 kilos off? Like, that's the resistance that is there in like these past few months, I guess. But I'll beat that. But yeah, truth in life that I didn't want to face. I really cannot think of anything. Maybe you can give me an example. Maybe I'm missing something, but
I'm thinking, what was it for myself? Now, no one have actually asked me to give an example. I think, one person actually answered that for her, it was that life is not black and white, and that life happens in the grave, for example. And for her, it took some time to actually realize how to hold that gray space of reality, for example. But if nothing comes to your mind, we can go to the next question, and if something comes back, we can come back to it.
Yeah. Well, no, definitely not. I mean, because I luckily had, I guess, enough life experience in a way. Like, I remember my mother was not like a strict mother, so I was really free since I was like 6th or 5th grade to go to KST. That's like a place where hard rock plays. It's like it's a part of the college of student technique. It's a club of students of technique, so it's like a student place.
It's a student club.
With, kids don't go to student clubs, but I was free to go because nobody told me not to. So since then I was really exposed to a lot of different stories, a lot of different kinds of people. So I guess, by experience you come to a certain point that nothing can surprise you, and that you can really understand that there can be a lot of different points of view. And I don't remember actually when did I get that, but
And I'm curious, what does success look like for you? And when was the first time actually you were kind of faced with the concept of success?
I remember this little detail that was a success at that point, and that was, I mean, since I remember it has to be the important one. When we had our first gig when I was 12, and when I played a few long solos, and people like that was the first encouragement I got from somebody that I don't know, that the thing you're doing is good. So I remember that as my first big success. But in general, what I think of success now is just, being able to be enough healthy in body and mind to do what you want to do. I mean, just to be able to compose, and I got to a certain point where I can, choose the projects that I want to do. And I guess the idea of success is that, interesting question. I just feel lucky. I feel lucky that I have the opportunity to do what I do and to try to express myself through that. And that's success for me. It doesn't have to be numbers. It doesn't have to be YouTube views. I'm not really good at marketing myself. I should learn how to do it a bit more. I mean, I should create a website because like I'm 40 years old and I did a lot of stuff and I still don't have a website. When people ask me for my biography, I'm going, oh, do I have one? And because, you know, I have to do that thing. But really that whole official idea of success is I don't think is the most important one. I mean, it's when you reach a certain level of doing something, I guess you should hire someone to do your like marketing thing or to just become better at handling your Instagrams and stuff, so you can like invite more people to what you're trying to do. I still don't know how to do that, but I think that the success is just to be able to do what you like to do, and if that's also your job, like that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
And because you never really know what's gonna make you successful. You know, a lot of things that even you sometimes artists don't like the stuff that they made that made them successful. Right? There are a lot of combinations. So I think that every only thing that you can do is to try to work the best you can to like really do this thing that you're doing, whether you're writing, whether you're composing, just to try to do it the best you can, and everything else is really not up to you. So
I mean, now that you're talking about, I actually really enjoy hearing that, because I feel like, if you would actually make a web page or market yourself, it would also narrow down who you are. And at the moment, you are so many things and you don't really need to fit into any category. So I feel that's quite an advantage to have and still be able to do and still be able to perform and compose and still have people coming to so your marketing is actually the good stuff you make, which is the perfect marketing in a way.
well, yeah, that's the way it should be. I mean, you should promote yourself when there is something to promote, and this whole idea of being a star sometimes is something else, something that's not really. It's weird, and I still, I actually am good in keeping it on this side when in the side of the quality. Actually, the stuff has to be good. It's not about being popular. It's about making something good rather than something that's necessarily going to be popular. If you can make it, both, that's great. But again, I have to say to mention like Zdravko Čolić, like one of the great things that I actually saw during my time with the band is that I was not the one who actually had that success, but I was actually the first next to this guy, and I actually saw all the reactions with the people. And you're not experiencing it, but you are near the person that is experiencing it, so it gives you like the first impression of what it would actually be like if you were that popular. And I'm not sure if I like it too much. It has like some cute moments, but I think it kind of takes you away from what you're trying to do. And actually, I think that maybe that could just be a theory. Like maybe if you don't have enough official recognition, that's actually going to keep you going more than if you had it. I'm not sure if I said it well, but when you're constantly striving for it, and despite all that official things which are actually meaningless, you still keep on pushing, and you actually never get too many taps on the shoulder to think that you're good. You never think that you're good enough, and that's what actually keeps you going. So that's also, I think that can be a good thing. Of course, you got to have some points where you actually do something that you can be, proud of, and have this feeling that you actually accomplished something, and then you can go on to the next one. But it's the most important to stay focused without any outside reaction, whether it's good or bad. I mean, because if you dedicate enough time, if you dedicate your life to something, you have to learn at some point to trust yourself. Maybe not only, but mostly. You can hear all the opinions from outside and stuff, but you are the one making that decision. And as long as there are no influences, too much influences around, the better, I think.
Oh yeah, I quite like this, that the learning of trusting yourself mostly. I think it's a lifelong process, but it's a beautiful thing to strive for. And then I am wondering, you were talking a lot about music, but what else supports you in your journey? Is music really the central only thing that happens, or there are some other things that support you in your everyday life, in your everyday being?
Well, there's my family and there's music, and that's pretty much it. I don't go out a lot. I don't go out at all. Like I go out when I conduct a show in a theater on Terazija, and that's like my social life. Because this year is going to be all about this opera that I'm writing, and there's a symphonic commission for Belgrade Philharmonic. Also, I have to finish it by 1st September. So those are two big things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, when you say is there anything else but music, I follow MMA from recently, not too much though, but yeah, I just realized like a few months ago, dude, you know like 30 names of some guys like from like welterweight division and stuff like that, and so I was like, dude, that's interesting. So yeah, that's the only thing other than music related stuff, because usually when I compose, I'm in the studio when here's the piano, there's the computer. So when I do something, when I take a rest, I just take a guitar and I do something else. So it's a profession, it's a hobby, it's pretty much, yeah, it's pretty much everything I do. But it's in different forms. So after composing, when I take the guitar to practice, I feel like I'm doing something completely different,
Yeah.
even though it is also the music.
Mm.
I wish I had more time to become a better cook, though. I mean, I love cooking in general, and I wish I was a better cook. So I hope that at some point I'm going to give it more time and more attention to details, as in music.
And that's another thing. You are constantly mentioning attention to detail. What does that look like for you? Which details are you paying attention to?
Details. Well, if we're talking about music, then it's. I wish I was, detailed in the same way in every category of my life. I mean, as in music. But yeah, I think the details are in general important. Like details when you're trying to express something, details when you're trying to express yourself, the way of handling yourself. You know, I remember like students, like I'm teaching them how to write mails, like a decent mails, like you learn how to sign yourself, like those technicalities. Those are little details that can leave a certain impression of you. And then again, it came from my composition professor that I mentioned. Like he was about those technical details, but those were not just technical details. They actually say something about you, like how much time you put in.
And they're the elegance.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I know the right equation, but I hope you know what you mean. Like, and in music, it's also like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single articulation of every single instrument has to be right for everything to fit together perfectly. And of course, sometimes, I mean, usually in rock and roll, people don't pay attention to those details, like in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, since I play those instruments, and usually I record stuff myself, and then when I'm explaining people how to play them, it's an interesting process, because a lot of times stuff that you do in studio you cannot really do live, but you actually can. So that's like my part of exploration.
Mm-hmm. And then, so just to kind of slowly start to wrapping up, but I still have like a question in terms of music and creating an expression. When do you know something is good enough?
The day before the deadline.
I love this answer.
That's when you have to do like the technical parts, like check if they can turn pages in correct places, and that's it. Well, it really depends, but the deadline is a hell of a friend for that question. I mean, because let's say my album, I should have released it like 10 years ago, because like a lot of songs are actually recorded Like the first song from the album is recorded in 2009, right? So, and I didn't have a deadline, and that's what happened. I put it out like 12 years ago. So yeah, deadlines are good, but when you don't have a deadline, when do you know it's good enough? Well, it's a question if you ever really know is it good enough, but I think it's just the amount of work that you put in, and it kind of shapes itself in some. Like I think that for most parts, let's say I did my symphony under a deadline, so it was like. But even in that, there are some technical things that I would maybe add up, but in terms of the form, everything is pretty much there. So, and of course, that can sometimes be physically exhausting, like especially like this last period before actually you have to do the notes. Like that's when you're the most in, and that's when those final decisions are being made. But do you really know when do you know is it good enough? Maybe you actually never know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can always be better. But you also mentioned LA, and I was wondering what happened for you there.
I went there for master studies in composition at USC Thornton. It was a life-changing experience. I loved that period of my life. I went there. It was the best way for me to realize the surroundings, like to see if I can fit in society, to see like what are other people like that are doing the same thing as I do. And but the thing about those sitting in two chairs, on two chairs, as I mentioned before, when I went to LA, I also had a job from Belgrade. I had to orchestrate Sanja Ilić. He's like a Serbian musician.
Oh yeah, I love Sanja Ilić. Wow.
And he did music for some TV series. Of the village is burning and the grandma is fixing her hair.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to orchestrate that project, and that's like an hour of music, and that's it's a job that you really have to sit and do. And but there was no other way, because actually I needed that money because I was going to America, and I needed it for for technicalities, for paying rent and stuff like that. So I had to take that job, and that took a lot of my time actually, where I could actually do something else, to meet other people, to go to see concerts. I didn't see anything. Like when I was in LA, it was only like homework and that orchestration. Both years, like first year I orchestrated the whole thing, and actually I came to Belgrade to conduct it in Sava Center before the semester was over. So actually I had to like beg them to let me before, and if I can do some arrangement for you. Oh yes, you can do arrangement. And then I'm doing the arrangement for these guys to let me go to Belgrade, and then go to Belgrade to conduct it. But it was good actually, because I was not hoping to go to Belgrade that soon, because I left for LA in August, hoping that I'm gonna be in Belgrade next summer, not before that. And this concert was in November, so
yeah.
And I remember not telling anyone. Nobody knew I was coming, so I just went to see my mother. I knocked on the door and she opened, and I remember her face like, "Sal, like, is it you?" Later on, I thought, Jesus, I mean, she could have had a stroke. Like maybe that was not such a good idea. But
yeah.
So yeah, the thing about LA, this was like the thing that actually took a lot of my time, but at the same time, if there wasn't for that job, I would be in a financial problem over there in Los Angeles. But despite all that, I met a lot of people. I made a lot of great friends. I played in a few bands. Those were, not those were just occasional gigs, but they were like good, interesting gigs. I played bass in one band and I played drums in the other band. I didn't play guitar in any of them. They didn't need the guitar, and I just came in to help my friends. But actually, it went well because it gave me a routine that I didn't really have. Because when you play an instrument only in studio, you simply need that routine. You need to play a certain instrument with some band. You simply need those gigs, so you don't need to, like, when I pick up the bass, I don't need to search for the tone anymore. It's there, like it's almost in a muscle memory, as for drums as well. So it gave me that kind of routine. And profession-wise, Donald Crockett was my composition teacher, and the most important thing that he actually taught me there, it was actually somehow optimizing the stuff that I already knew and was already using in a way, like, your conscience of ranges, like, ranges when you have certain material, like what's going to do if you put it octave higher, octave lower, like that sort of more technical and more like easy. I did it in my other compositions, but I didn't put it in my brain like that. And also the idea about time, because like I love Russian composers, I love Prokofiev, I love it. So a lot of my music had a downbeat. Like you always know where the downbeat is. And the thing that they taught me is that you don't need to know where the downbeat is. The music can go slowly, then go up, and then come back down. It doesn't have to be bomb, bomb, bomb. Stravinsky did it. So, and again, I used to listen to Rite of Spring since my first year of studying composition in Belgrade. But, I was not ready for it yet, like to really internalize all that, those possibilities of making those rhythmical figures, and that the way that music can simply flow without having a strict downbeat.
Yeah.
Then also jazz experience. There were a lot of great jazz professors. Actually, I went to LA to that particular school because of the guy named Vince Mendoza. And he's actually a jazz guy. He's a jazz arranger. He arranged the Johnny Mitchell's album Both Sides Now. He arranged a lot of stuff, and he's a great arranger. He also studied composition with the Donald Crockett. Actually, that's how I actually picked up Donald Crockett. I realized that if this guy studied with him, then that's the way to go. And it turned out that Don Crockett was actually the guy that taught me more than Vince did, even though the Vince was the reason for me to go there. So
okay.
Yeah, phenomenal environment, because they had nonstop master classes and stuff like that from the people from the industry, not professors. But you had Shaka Khan, you had David Foster, you had, I can't even remember the names. And in every category, you had the biggest possible names, like jazz composition, classical composition, jazz guitar. Pat Metheny was there. I was not there to see him then, but at some point, I have time and I have to choose, like, what am I going to go now? To see Shaka Khan or something else. So yeah, and I didn't see any concerts. That's actually one thing that I pity the most. I lived like 15 minutes from Staples Center, and like all the big concerts were usually there. I remember Stevie Wonder was in Staples Center, and I was like, oh, I have to do homework. I'll see him next year. I'm gonna get back anyway, so I didn't see him. Bon Jovi as well, Coldplay. A lot of concerts, and no, I had to do the homework.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I'm curious because I stayed a little bit. I'm like, my personal interests or my personal love is always with traditional music, and you worked with Sanja Ilic, and I'm wondering, how do you see our traditional music? And because it has something very kind of special, and how much of that do you use in your composition as well?
I used it the first time in 2012, actually. That was the summer break between those 2 years in Los Angeles. And it was like a commission I did for my friend Nemanja Radulović. He was on an Australian tour, and I had to do some composition that has some traditional melodic motives from Serbia. And that's when I wrote Serbian Fantasy. Later, when I got back from LA, I organized a concert on Kolarac, and I conducted it with Ervin Lukasešek. There's a great recording, and he played it amazingly well. So yeah, from then on, actually, in next few compositions as well, I used some material, and the whole idea of actually bringing that material in this realm of classical compositions, when you write stuff that are supposed to be like classical, modern or anything. This is something like, national schools, like something that Tchaikovsky did a few hundred years ago, right? But maybe language is a bit more modern, it's a bit different, but I said Tchaikovsky because when I use that material, I try not to spoil it, right? Mm-hmm. Because there are some examples where contemporary composers take some traditional themes and you cannot hear it. There is no theme. I mean, only he knows what did he do with it to make it sound like Like that's not what it is. So I tried to keep that, that important element always there, and I did it a few times. Like there's a Serbian fantasy which has a lot of traditional songs in it. Then in the Daughter of the Moon for cello symphony orchestra and narrator, there is this one part where you can hear the song called Preleteše ptice lastavice. Wonderful song.
That's my favorite. Oh.
And that I harmonize it a bit differently. And it's a scene where actually that Daughter of the Moon, she sees the pasture, how they say pasture.
No, I cannot remember.
Shepherd.
Yes.
Shepherd, yeah. She sees a shepherd laying on the grass and playing a flute, and there's that song. So it's like very like tremolo strings, and you can just hear that melody, and it's like that. I just changed the way the thing is harmonized. And I think it's not necessarily every composition needs to have that, but in general, I think that composers should use it maybe a bit more, because there is no really that kind of arrangement for this traditional music. And traditional music here, actually, when people hear that kind of material, it's almost like they're not really comfortable with it. They think it belongs somewhere else. They think it belongs on some weddings under some tent or whatever.
Yes.
But there's a lot to it, and I think that there's a lot of really good material that can be really greatly presented in this orchestral or let's say this classical suite. So I try not to make it a mannerism, because that's also like dangerous. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna be the full composer. No, I don't want to be that. And actually, the thing that there's one movement from this saxophone concerto that has Leona's theme, third movement, is I actually had 2 days to write it, so I was like, okay, you don't have time. It has to be like something that is, effective and with not too much philosophy. But then even that first part is rumba from later on. There's some faster part with uneven rhythm. Like it kind of breaks this room, and then it got back to it. So even though it is at the edge, on the edge, I think it's on a good edge. It's still kind of this middle part justifies this first part, and I don't know. I mean, whenever I try this stuff, I just try to make it formally well, like not to be boring, not to be predictable, to have enough surprises, and to keep that's also a traditional thing. Like when I sing it, it has that.
Yes,
that's something. It's a bit nasty. It's a bit, I'm not sure if I'm smiling or is my smile a bit bitter, but still, I mean, that material has something that can be worked into something else. So
in a way, the way I see it, it's part of painting the soul with the music, painting the souls of the people. And not necessarily all the time, but that is kind of an important part of who we are.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that has been here, like that way of articulating things. And actually, my awareness began when I was in LA, because when I went to LA, I expected that, Guns N' Roses are waiting for me and stuff like that. I mean, but then I realized the people that I'm hanging out with, they're listening to Esma Redžepo, like some recordings from 60s. They're listening to some Balkan music, and they're like, oh man, this is good. So actually, they were the ones who opened my eyes to that material that was kind of lame, because it's, it turned into turbo folk, and nobody likes turbo folk. That mainstream way of handling that material can be sometimes even a bit vulgar and simply bad. But when you take a look at the older stuff, I mean, when you dig under that, you realize that, I mean, those players that play those things, I mean, it's not just being a virtuoso, but it's being a virtuoso that is specific to certain region. Like, when you go to Argentina, the way they play that bandoneons and stuff like that, I mean, it's almost like a national culture. You have also that in Serbia. Even though if you want to learn accordion, you have to go to Kragujevac, not Belgrade. I mean, but these are other problems. But I mean, there are a lot of interesting articulations, and if you spend a lifetime learning how to play Bach and learning how to like ornament the right way, whether you're playing Baroque or anything else, I mean, why not this? Actually, I did an album with Nemanja Radulović that's gonna come out this September for Warner Bros. This is his first CD for Warner Bros. And actually, we did some transcribing of Šišić, the violin player Aleksandar Šišić. There was a commercial on TV Palma. Maybe you remember. Oh, Palma, živeli! It's incredible, like Kolo. I don't know how would you.
Actually, I don't even know the translation for Kolo, but I can explain it by people holding hands and dancing together.
Yeah, in circles. Yeah. So
yes.
I called it a circle dance because I mean, when I was in LA, what was the word?
A chain of people dancing.
Yeah. Maybe that can be different. I put it in a little bracket like Kolo and then a bracket round the dance.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's understandable enough. But I forgot where was I. Anyway, we did the transcription of that Šišić violin player that I was telling you about. It's like a very fast, very virtuosic violin style, and we took like 3 compositions and made it into one. And luckily on YouTube there's an option you can play something half speed, so you can really hear in detail what he's doing. That's incredible how articulate that is. I mean, that's like, it's quantized, like, you have 5 little notes here before he is the right one. And it's very notating friendly. So we notated it all. And with that attention to detail, actually, I'm trying to write stuff for the orchestra. Also in Daughter of the Moon, this composition of mine for cello, narrator, and symphony orchestra, there's a part where they play Moravac. Moravac is probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular, round dance. People holding hands, dancing in circle dance. And I wrote those trillers down, and it sounds pretty good. And they're not used to it, but then again, if you pay attention to how the real guys play that stuff, and if you just notate it right, then these guys can play it too. And that's like the beauty of going into that type of details. And it's just lovely. I mean, because there's so many different ways you can do a trailer like for that kind of stuff. And I also play them on a guitar, so I simply love discovering all those little patterns that once they get in your system, you can just fire them up whenever you need them. So yeah, I think that our traditional music has a lot to offer, both in this melodic way where phrases are not predictable, they're not between 2 bars and 4 bars. You have sevdalinki, like melodies on a very long breath, but with a great melodical line, and you can harmonize it in so many different ways.
I mean, here I'm actually singing with a Bulgarian singing group, and they are insane. They are like the rhythms, like they have songs in uneven rhythms that have more than 3 rhythms within one song. They're changing with it. I mean, it's just insane, but it's beautiful, and it's really beautiful to see. And then when they jazzify that, it's even crazier. So I just love that. So just to be conscious of your time, to have the final 2 rapid fire questions. The first one is, what are some compliments that you like to receive?
It's good.
Okay.
That one is, good enough.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that I'm very clumsy with the compliments. Like when somebody gives me a compliment, it's like I'm almost ashamed of it in a way. I'm still actually trying to build some dignity. Like when somebody says something nice, like
okay,
bang my head and say thank you. I'm always embarrassed in a way. So yeah, I don't know about compliments, but yeah, any compliment will do if it's from the heart.
From the heart, okay. And then the next one is, what is an absurd thing about you that not many people know about?
Absurd that not many people know about. I have no idea. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I should have thought of something, but yeah.
No. I mean,
First time searching for something absurd. Nothing is really too absurd, and then what people don't know, well, people know nothing anyway, except these few friends of mine. So it's a tough one.
Do you have some funny rituals or something?
No, I should try to make a schedule. Like I'm planning this for years.
You shouldn't do anything. I think what you're doing is already incredible. So I don't think there are shoulds in your system. They're only coming from your head, honestly.
I know, but there should be some shoulds, because if you have some routine, then maybe you can
do more than what you have done.
Well, there's certain little goals, big goals, and this is just like a mess, and you're crawling to somewhere, and then you get to the place without, having this picture about it. But
yeah. Okay, and one last question is, what are things that have become more important to you, and what have become maybe less important to you with age?
With age, you get certain integrity for what you do, because the more you do it, the better you do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that integrity part can pretty much be an umbrella term, like for choosing the right projects, learning when to say no, learning how to communicate in terms of whether it's something that is personal, emotional, or is it just talking about how much money are you going to get for the project, because for some reason in Serbia especially, people don't like to talk about certain stuff, and then you have certain expectations, and those expectations are not met. So in that, like to be concrete, to be respectful for other people that don't think the same as you, and I guess that's it.
Well, I think I sit in awe in front of you. So I sit in awe. I don't even know the Serbian word now, but almost like with admiration. I was already kind of knowing that this will be impressive, but I did not expect this level of impressive. So I really want to thank you for everything you have done. It's quite incredible.
Thank you. I mean, as I said, like my English is sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it gets terrible. Like when my brain starts bugging, and then I'm like, ugh. I hope there's not too many of that. But yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I hope everything made some sense, because I have a feeling that I start with one subject and then I go somewhere else.
But that's actually the beauty. I mean, actually, the idea of this interviews is actually showing the person as it is, and it's the way you think. And I think it's a beautiful way to think, because it's this divergent brain that is going all over the place and still is able to bring a little bit of focus to produce something, which is incredible. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time.
Please, thank you for inviting me.
You have just heard the story of Aleksandar Sedlar, a Serbian composer, conductor, multi-instrumentalist, musical producer, and associate professor at the Faculty of Arts in East Serbia. He completed his master's studies in composition at USC Thornton School of Music in Los Angeles and doctoral studies at the Faculty of Music in Belgrade. He has performed with many well-known symphonic orchestras around the world and collaborated with some renowned soloists such as Nemanja Radulović, Camille Thomas, Zdravko Čolić, and others. He has composed and orchestrated several musical pieces, with the Moonlight Daughter touching the hearts of many. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and I hope you will like and subscribe so that our voices can touch more people.